Imagine you are the president of a Fortune 500 company. Your CEO and vice president are at odds. You, as an expressive leader, are tasked with resolving and restoring this dilemma. Hughes and Kroller explain expressive leader as an individual that focuses on overcoming interpersonal problems in the group, diffusing tensions, and promoting solidarity. Now, let's take the example of a car. In a car, there's the engine, transmission, and suspension. The engine is able to convert fuel into motion so that your car can move. The transmission turns power into movement. The energy generated by the engine is transmitted to the wheels and allows movement with the use of the transmission. The suspension is an intricate network designed to work in concert for smoothing out the ride and keeping the car in control. Now, without these three parts, the car would not be able to function properly. The same can be said of a CEO and a vice president. Without the CEO and a vice president, the company would not be able to function properly. So it's very important to make the CEO and vice president understand that they are valued in the company and that both their roles are needed in the company in order for the company to function correctly. In Chapter 4, we learn about formal organizations. 3 formal organizations are voluntary organizations, coercive organizations, and utilitarian organizations. A voluntary organization is an association that members enter and leave freely. A coercive organization is where members are there against their will. And a utilitarian organization is formed for practical reasons. Now, how are each of these organizations different? You can think of it as one organization be created for self, one created against self, and one created beyond self. A voluntary organization is created for self. For example, service groups, hiking and biking groups are created to benefit yourself. Coercive organizations are created against self. For example, mental hospitals, prisons, and being drafted into the armed forces. Utilitarian organizations are formed for beyond self, to help others. We can have the example of labor unions, corporations, government bureaus, and other agencies. An organization that I was a part of was a voluntary organization, the Photography Club. The Photography Club had many positives and had many negatives. One positive of being a part of the Photography Club was learning intricate ways to take photos. One negative of being a part of the Photography Club was that there were so many members entering this club that it was really hard for the instructor to get a one-on-one to teach us how to really be intricate photographers. Now, imagine you decided to run for public office. Although you have little to no experience with elections, holding office, or campaigning, you feel you can be successful since you have a friend who served in a public office seat last term. We learn about 7 characteristics that define Weber's ideal bureaucracy. Now, Weber's ideal bureaucracy talks about a model bureaucracy for organizations. One of the characteristics that describe this situation is said as such, where qualifications are filled based on technical competence and not personal considerations. It also goes on to say, presumably trained individuals do better than those who gain offices based on family ties. Therefore, what do you have to prove based on these characteristics? You don't have much to prove considering you have a lot of experience because you helped an individual last term gain a public office seat. Now, individuals might say that that doesn't count, but it does, because although you don't have the professional experience that many might think, you do have experience because you were able to help an individual attain a public seat. Now, as a creative manager of a small group of employees in the advertising department, you notice one of your designers have withdrawn from the meeting, offering no input. And this employee's alienation concerns you. Now, what would you do to socialize the employee and engage them in their job? Now, you'd have to ask yourself, why does this employee alienate themselves? Could they be feeling a sense of burnout? Do they view their job as something that is no longer satisfying? In order for the employee to find their job more appealing, they need to be reintroduced to their job in a different way. Things that need to get the employee back on track. Now, from personal experience, I can say that job burnout is not something that is pleasant. I had an employer who did speak to me about having a job burnout, and they did recommend different types of services, someone that I can talk to about it, or different ways that I can be reintroduced to my job to make my job more fulfilling, to make me more happier, instead of going to work feeling like I'm obligated to do the same task over and over again. What are things that I could do differently? Maybe can I start off my day in a different way? Can I do different things, considering this is the healthcare field? Can I have a different assignment every time I come in? There were many things that my employer was able to set the stage for me to not feel like I was being burned out every time I came back to work. And I think that's something that's very important when you're talking to an employee and this employee necessarily feels alienated. It might be because of job burnout. They might feel that their job is just that. It's a job. It's no longer a career anymore for them. So that is one of the most important aspects, is to actually get the input from the employee and not feel as though you have to talk down to them because they no longer feel like they have a sense of being at this job. So now that we have learned about all the different types of dynamic groups and organizations, now we're able to get a better view of a sociologist's perspective on groups and organizations.